Thanks for having us. I'm Tanushree. I'm from Accenture. I'm a managing director with their strategy practice focused on talent and organization. And I am privileged to have my panel over here from the industry playing important role across the ecosystem. We have Jeff Griggs from Eightfold, Chief Revenue Officer. We have Nate Herto from SAP Global VP, Solutions Go-to-Market. We have Sunny Yuen from Workday, Director Product Strategy, and we have Decreed's own Dave Platt over here. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about ecosystems, yes, and then we're going to talk about some more skills. Okay, so through Accenture's research and through our engagement across Fortune 500 companies, we realized that there are 5 forces that's going to change the world in the next decade. As we call them, total enterprise reinvention, talent, sustainability, metaverse, and ongoing tech revolution are the 5 forces. As you see, talent is in the center of this change. When we talk about talent, CEOs across these companies all agree that the crisis for talent is more than perhaps the other crises that we know very well, like global energy crisis, supply chain crisis, and so on. But what is it about talent which is a crisis? Is it heads? Is it something else? So it is a skilled talent which is a crisis, not so much as heads, but more about the right skills being present within the workforce to mitigate the organization needs that is there currently. What about this talent shift? Have we noticed this in the past? Is it a new phenomenon? Why does it happen, right? So there have been certain driving forces around us which has resulted to where we are today. We all are familiar with this rise of technologies, growing automation, jobs getting automated, new skills needs to get developed. New skills, when we talk new skills, it's beyond technical skills. It's the human skills, problem solving, critical thinking, communication, connection, ability to draw inferences. These skills need to get developed in tandem with technology, which is kind of changing at a very, very scary pace. And then COVID-19, we all know that kind of changed all our lives. Talent and skilling is more a corporate responsibility now than ever before, because keeping people employable, keeping people at their jobs is an important responsibility for an organization. It's no more just a cost factor. It's no more just a heads factor. How can organizations mitigate this talent shift? And very often I get asked about this by my clients. It's all about skills, and we've heard so much about it over the last 24 hours or more. But to emphasize further, broadening your skills base is a key to it. So we call it a T-shaped skill. So you should have a broad base of skills, and then you have a depth of skills. So it's broadening your skill set. Democratizing access to learning, that's a very important step, because people are learning in a very different way than they have learned perhaps in the last decade. So opening access to learning, and then enabling people to be self-directed in the way they do and manage their learning. So giving autonomy to individuals to drive the way they learn and making it equally compelling across different channels. So all of this is what is needed to mitigate the shift that we just spoke about. Why I mentioned learners have changed, and that's what we've seen last decade. There's been a massive boom of information that's available at our fingertips. You really don't need to depend on one source of learning. So you have foraging learners, people who are self-directed. They always are learning through Googling, through going through TED Talks, or reaching out to materials themselves. Then you have people who learn by doing. So for them, it's more about fusion of working and learning. So they are the 70% people who are on-the-job learners. Then you have you teach me, I teach you, peer group, social learners. And then you have the immersive, reinvented learners who are gamified, learners who would learn if it's an interactive environment for them. So different ways of learning across different platforms, across different methods. So what's happening here? So when an individual goes through such varied, ways of learning, you tend to lose the data of how people learn. You tend to lose because if you have a traditional LMS or a traditional system, you just focus on what's getting captured there, but then there's so much an individual goes through to upskill themselves, which gets lost. And that's where I believe Decreed plays such an important role by bringing it all together, as we've heard from Dave in the previous session as well, bringing it all together, making sure that the data is across all these different learner types gets captured through one platform. And it's available to understand how people learn, to make it more customizable, make it a personalized experience such that the behavior continues. But when you consider learning, that is the core, but then what's the big picture? Right? Learning is important for your overall talent transformation. So when I talk to clients, they say, I want to do talent transformation. I want my people to believe in the new, to look forward and be different. Fine. And then I've got this LXP to do the job for me. Fine. But that would not get it done for you, because you need an integration going. And that's where the ecosystem comes into play. You need AI intelligence in the talent space to connect some of these dots and then help you predict what your future is going to look like. You need your HRMS, HRIS systems to talk to all of these components and then create an ecosystem which is appropriate for you, given your culture, given your tech setup. And it's not one size fits all. It's never going to be one formula working across all the clients. And that's why we have this panel here to talk about their experiences as they take it to clients, and they have each individual stories of where they've seen success. With that, I'll take it on with my panel here, first starting with Jeff, as to how do you see Eightfold playing a role in this whole ecosystem?
Thank you very much. That was an excellent introduction, and thank you to Decreed for having us here. This is amazing. To have a panel like this, it's just fantastic. So let's just start off with a high-level overview of what Eightfold is. And at the heart of it, Eightfold is a system of intelligence. And from the slide, you can obviously see that what we do is we sit on top of enterprise HR systems like Workday and SAP, and certainly Decreed. And that's really the vision that we have for the future, is that there will be intelligence that is needed to be gathered from all of these systems that then can make predictions, as well as the understanding of a career and potential for an individual. We are an AI company at heart, which means that we pull in a very large data set from public sources. We also have a tremendous global data set that we've built over the last 7 years of our company. Our founders came from the data science and the AI background with very large technology companies in Silicon Valley, and understand personalization. And because of that, we then can understand what the potential is and what the career potential is for an individual. You heard Michael talk earlier today that you really need to understand as an individual what your skills are, and you need to validate that. And in order to do that, you have to have a very large data set, and you have to understand that on a global basis. What each job function is, what each role is, and what skill as an individual has builds to that profile. And then it builds that learnability. And that's at the core of it what we do, and we'll go to the next slide. And what that does is it creates a single platform of intelligence. And that platform solves for multiple modules. The first one being talent management. When you look at an individual inside of a company and they look at what skills they have, there are skills that they have often forgot about. believe it or not, the more you progress in your career, the fewer things you put on your LinkedIn profile, and you forget about those skills. So that is something that we value very highly, is that we understand those skills that you may have forgotten about. Because when you let individuals do their own self-assessments, you don't get all the right information that you would expect to get on a career and individual skills. So we allow that to happen for an individual where they can validate, and we give them the proficiencies, and we can predict up to 90% accuracy what the potential is of an individual in their career. So we can do that in talent management. Then we move over to talent acquisition, which is really the ability to, when you're looking at sourcing candidates, what skills do they have? What is the right fit, and then you match that to them. And then they can validate that with full transparency. That's one of the biggest things that we get asked about as an AI company is, show us in your data why I'm a fit for this role or why I should be hired into this role. And we can do that with, again, 90% accuracy, and also full transparency with all the validations we have from patents, all the validations we have from all the AI and ethics, not patents, but all of the regulatory things we've gone through. We're in 120 different countries, as you can imagine, 20 different languages, which means we've had to be compliant from an AI perspective and show full transparency across GDPR, workers' councils, all the things that you would consider to be very challenging in your work environment today or within compliance. And last but not least, with this new gig economy, we solve for project-based and gig workers. And all of that comprises of our talent intelligence platform that sits on top of the systems I alluded to earlier. And with that, Nate?
So judging by the unionization that's happened at the CAB earlier, I'm assuming most of y'all are familiar with SuccessFactors. But when we look at the platform that we have, we look at taking all of the elements that make your employees, the people in your system, who they are. And I think it's an important view that we bring in, that we have all of the different elements, not only of the person, but then how that connects back to the rest of your enterprise. Obviously, being part of SAP, we have about 400,000 customers, in the best-run businesses in the world. Bringing that data both into our system about where they work, how they get paid, but also pushing that back out to the rest of the intelligent enterprise to help fuel those other systems. Really looking at how do we take all of the HR functions, whether it's paying people, whether it's tracking their time, whether it's helping them develop learning, whether it's identifying their successions. How do we take that data from various sources and how do we make it more relevant so that the organizations can run better and more effectively? On the next slide, we're really going to break that down to how do we look at that from a learning perspective, right? Because we could talk about all those different modules that we have. But when we think about learning, we know over our several decades of experience in learning that learning is very much an integration business. I don't think there's a single company out there that has one vendor that does everything stem to stern for learning. So when we think about it specifically in the context of Degreed, we look at overlaying the learning experience platform on the engine that runs your compliance, your managed, and your governed resources, taking those and marrying those to some of the ungoverned resources so that we have an end-to-end continuum across all the different ways that people learn. I'll turn it over to Sunny now.
Thanks. See how we can get along? This is great. So at Workday, right, we offer solutions to support the office of the CHRO and workers from hire to retire, right? And skills is the most critical and important thing we're focusing on to weave through all of these processes. Today, I can't make recommendations of learning or gigs to match to or career goals without skills. But we don't have all of the information, right? We're not an island, and so we have to depend on partners like Degreed and others to make sure we build the most robust skills profile possible to drive the best targeted recommendations that are skills-based. And we've got some aspirational things here too, right? As we all mature together, we expect to be able to compensate people based on skills that they bring to the table and that they perform and deliver work from. Likewise, we'll look to schedule is another option, right? Based on the skills. As soon as we have confidence that we understand and agree to the proficiency and the skill and the value that that has, we'll be able to do those things. Next slide, please. And I think the really important takeaway in conversations we've all heard through presentations as well is to keep this simple. And so for us, it's building that initial skills foundation, right? Turn the Skills Cloud on. We'll start inferring things so you can get an understanding of the profile of your organization and then start mapping that to where you need to target interventions or build, buy, and borrow that talent. And this, we believe, enables you to be agile and responsive as an organization. So thank you.
Thanks, Sonny. So you guys might remember me. I was here just a few minutes ago. Actually, can you go to the next slide? I won't spend too much time, but I just want to speak really quickly. One of the things that we're really focused on at Degreed, especially in my teams, is building new capabilities and functionalities around our integrations. And that means different ways of working, different enablement tools for the partners that we connect to and the partners who build to our APIs. And that's really a big focus for us in the coming years as we continue to expand. Like Sonny said, integrations are super important. Everyone on the group here is, no one believes that we can do everything and be an island, so we're all working together to try to bring the best experiences together. And these are a few of the places that Degreed's continuing to work. And thanks for coming and hanging out at our party this week.
All right. Accenture has the privilege of working with each one of you and with our clients and, taking each client situation and then solving it with you as pieces of the puzzle. With that, I would pivot to a set of questions that we have for the panelists, and then we're going to open it up for the audience towards the end, after we would have gone through a set. This question is for all of you. What is the ecosystem your clients are envisioning? Jeff, if you could start, please.
Thank you. They're envisioning a lot of things. And I can imagine all of you are out there asking that very question. What are we trying to solve for here? We get asked a lot, and our CHRO, I think, describes it the best way. He says, in the past as a CHRO, I was driving my car without the headlights on. And now I need to have those headlights turned on. I need to understand where I'm going. So what that means is he has to understand, as all of you do, what those skills are in your organization. So what he, as well as all of the clients and prospects that we talk to around the globe, are envisioning is really, how do I look at my workforce and what is the talent that I have within that workforce and how do I use it? So what we've started to understand is that there are multiple aspects to what they're envisioning, and that is, how do I assess the current workers that I have? How do I reskill and upskill those individuals? How do I actually validate the skills that they have in an effective way that actually relates to what that individual is trying to do with their career? And then how do I take that information and plan for the future? And when they look at holistically how they are going to accomplish that, we work with everybody on this panel and certainly with Accenture on how we build that out so that you can identify the current workforce you have, their skills, who can you reskill and upskill, and then who do you need to hire for the future? We look at it in those three buckets. And those are the questions that we usually answer very effectively by using AI, because you can identify all of those in all of those different buckets. And that's usually what we hear in the market today.
I think our answer is probably a little different, just given the breadth of the solutions that we offer. So I think there's probably two answers to this question for us. One is for a company that is an SAP shop, that has their supply chain, that has all of their environmental health and safety, finance, all of those elements built in. The ecosystem that they envision is one that complements that suite completely, that leverages our development platform, our reporting platform, et cetera, and plugs in seamlessly. Now, I think for SuccessFactors customers, ones that are really just focused, or that the remit of the people care is really around the HR technologies. It's really, how do we augment going deeper than what our solution provides? I think it was said in the last session, we'd love to build everything as completely as possible, but that's just not realistic. So how do we look at building a base framework? And in some of our areas, we're incredibly deep. I don't think there's a payroll system out there that's as deep as SuccessFactors. In other areas, we may be either new to the area, or we may just decide that that's not our core competency, and we would look to somebody like an Eightfold to go even deeper than what we've already done. So I think that for our customers, they're really looking for us to provide them an entry point and a piece of depth. But then as we look at regional or industry-specific niche areas, being able to partner with people that can go really deep to augment those areas where we would cover the 90% use case.
So the way we think about this is, in hearing from customers, they envision an ecosystem that works, right? We've always had these functional integrations that generally followed a particular flow. In this world, the learner owns the experience, right? So we can't control what their entry point is going to be into any of these flows. So it's critically important that we have the most up-to-date, real-time, complete picture of their skills to drive our recommendations respectively as they enter the system. So that's, in my view, what's the very simple thing that they want, is for it to work and that the learner controls that experience from any entry point.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I was going to take a very integration nerd approach to the answer, which is they want it to be seamless, they want it to be consistent, they want it to be easy, and for the data to be the same in all of the places. So making sure that we connect in ways that are easy to connect, and also to make it so that it's open and the right tools can be plugged in at the right times in the right directions, is really what we're hearing from all of you every single day. So.
Awesome. Now, we all are partners. We work together with clients, and we get through each situation in a very tailored manner. But how would you define best partnerships? Like, what works, where everybody gets to, get the best of each other out? What's your best partnership look like?
I think that's an easy one for us, right? It's the transparency, right? You heard, the panelists talk about the fact that you have to have visibility into the data that's accurate, has to work, has to fully function in the way that you want to use it in your business. The best partnerships we have, and a lot of them are right here on the stage, is that we understand the integrations, we understand the APIs, we understand the data set that we're going to get. We understand how and when you're going to use that information to make business decisions. And again, going back to an intelligent organization, all of the systems of record that I talked about earlier, and the system of intelligence married together is what's going to give you that best visibility into the talent you have in your organization, the talent you're going to build for the future.
For me, this is the one that you drive. If our customers say, this is what works for us and this is how we envision using it, those are the ones that are the most successful. In fact, the partnership with Degreed, we had a large common customer tell me in a meeting, you need to go talk to these guys because I'm using them and I want you to work better together. And so, for me, our executives, our product leaders, our partner team, they can all envision what's cool and what might work. But once it's validated and driven from the customer up, those are the ones that are the best and the most successful.
Yeah, I'd echo that, right? It starts with the shared belief that we serve you, the customer first, and then of course there's the honesty and trust we have to build, and that is supported by the leap of faith, right? We're all taking a little bit of a leap, and with honesty and trust, we're gonna all land together.
Yeah, that's right. When we work together, the best partnerships are the ones where we're really able to have those open conversations and dive into what are the different bits of value they're going to create on both sides of the scale, both sides of the line. And also, my teams, we work directly with your development teams, regular basis. We're on calls on a weekly basis or more than that, and making sure that we're building those relationships makes for the best partnerships, right? The best working relationships, and the ones where we have those really strong partnerships and in some cases friendships are really some of the best ones that we enjoy working with. Delivering value and having a good time doing it is pretty important to us too.
Awesome. So we heard what makes a very good partner. Trust, I heard. Transparency, I heard. Customer need, I heard. Peeling the onion some more. To be a very good partner, you need to have the common language. and we all here talk about skills. So my question to you is, each of us, customers included, and each of you have different skills taxonomy. How do you build the common language of a consistent skills taxonomy to be able to communicate within the systems and provide a seamless experience for the customer?
So getting back to honesty and trust, we all have, I think, a little point of view of maybe we should be the sun and the galaxy here, but that's just not totally realistic to, again, serve you. So it's that working closely to define, we're not going to boil the ocean and map everything, but what is critical for success for you and the partnership to work together on. And you saw earlier some of the great progress that the team is making here. And so we're excited to continue along this journey and find the right place to support our mutual customers with respect to what's important to map or not.
I think this is a really good question. Thanks, Sunny, for that answer. That in order to understand your skills taxonomy, you have to understand the skills of the people you have to begin with. You have to also understand what is it that your future needs to be when you build the skills of the future. It's ever changing. We heard that in the first session here. And if you think about what is consistent right now, it's all about change. And that change has to be understood in the skills within the taxonomy and the identification of what are those skills in your workforce that you identify today that are the skills of the future, and what are those that need to be reskilled and upskilled. And then you have to look at how does the entire organization look at that holistically. Well, holistically, you have to have the insights into what your organization has today, and you have to understand that this is the way the business is transforming. And you have to understand that some of the job descriptions, which I'm sure all of you can agree with, aren't the best, right? So you have to then align to what is it that you need to build based on intelligence that then creates the job descriptions for who you're going to up-level, reskill, or hire for the future. So regardless of system of record or system of intelligence that you're using, you have to understand that you're going to marry that data to then make decisions, whether it's on succession planning, whether it's on who's going to do the new future role within the company as you transform as a business. But in order to do that, you have to understand at the core of that, what is it that the skills that everybody has and what are you hiring for the future? And you have to do that in an intelligent way with a full view of all of the data that is validated and transparent.
Yeah, I would add from a tactical perspective, when we're thinking about how to make it easier, it's flexibility, it's configuration, customization, and honestly automation, right? You don't want to have to go in and map 200,000 skills across 3 different platforms, right? You want to make that as easy as possible, so that it's more of a checklist, like, yep, I see these, they look good to me, I can go ahead and do that. So those sorts of tools and functionalities are the things that we're thinking about from a perspective of making it easier, so that you're not spending a tremendous amount of time, and it's consistent across the whole ecosystem. That's where I think we'll have the biggest impact, so that the data becomes usable for all the things that we've talked about here in each of the different platforms.
Okay, so we heard about how each of the ecosystem players are thinking about scale. We're thinking about making it easier. We are thinking about creating that common language as the ecosystems interact with each other, keeping in mind the customer needs, which are the central pivotal point over here. And each customer would have their own set of skills, which are very niche to them and are perhaps proprietary to them to a great extent. So the integration flexibility is what would help these ecosystems to interplay in that environment. All right, pivoting to the learner now. We spoke about the organization. So when you have multiple systems, I, as a learner, would not love my experience if I have to jump systems and then do my learning through multiple, avenues, multiple interfaces. So how do you make an employee experience seamless when in the back end we know there's the technology is complex and there are multiple connections going on? Nate.
Yeah, so the tactical answer to that is by having the engine really be able to handle any modality of learning, right? And I think this is not a new concept. All of you have multimodal learning deployed across your organizations, but how do we start supporting the different types of learning so that that record, so that the offerings that are managed are all in the same place, in the same hierarchy, so you're not having multiple systems that are pulling duplicate data or data that's closely aligned. So, I think that's kind of the core technical answer. When we think about access to that learning, right, making sure that we expose all of that data in a way that can be consumed by other systems. And we have customers that are using Degreed, we have customers that have built bespoke interfaces for certain audiences. But just making sure that that data is available and that the types of records that are managed, regardless of where they ultimately live, they could live in SharePoint, they could live within the Degreed catalog, within the SuccessFactors catalog, it could be VR that sits completely outside, but making sure that the metadata about those interventions are all managed in the same place and all made available equally.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll echo that, right? And I mentioned earlier, the learner owns the experience. So ensuring that they have the fully accurate picture from wherever they enter the flow of learning is critically important. And so we have foundational learning integrations that help us get there. And we've built out a program, a team, and partnerships for skill specifically to supplement that, right? Because these things obviously work hand in hand.
Yeah. So as a client told me once, it's quite complicated, it's scary, where should I start? So, and I echo that sentiment. When you have so many options to choose from, and the best ones are here with me, but there's so many ways to get started on this journey. I often ask my partners, how would I advise my clients to get started on their journey? So, Sunny, any advice?
Sure. So provided the organization is bought in, including leadership, the starting point is turn it on. Turn the Skills Cloud on in Workday, right? And we'll start inferring things. You don't need to think about programs yet to start actively getting users to add skills. And then beyond that, I think we heard it yesterday in some of the customer sessions, target a very specific, small, manageable set of critical skills for the organization in the coming year, and the programs to support that. Start there, implement, and measure all along the way.
Sunny and I joked yesterday that we were going to have the same answer to this question. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One of the things that we see are customers that say, hey, we deferred turning this on, enabling 2 years ago, and now they're kind of, well, we wish we could. So I think, starting, again, in understanding what your outcomes are and where you have support. I think that's the most critical component, because if you don't understand what outcomes you're trying to drive and you don't have support from either an executive or a learner consumer side, you're not going to be successful. And then from there, take your lessons learned, right? Do an iterative process where you examine, are we achieving the outcomes? Are we getting surprised and having positive outcomes? And I think within our solution, you can start with what we have. If your problem is that you're not bringing the right people into your organization to develop further, look to, a partner like Eightfold. If you are looking at internal mobility, right, looking at a Degreed and ways that we can advance that learner experience through skills. So there are a lot of capabilities that are built within our platform to understand all of the aspects around who a person is, understanding things like mobility and pay grades and all of those attributes, but starting small, starting focused, and starting with defined outcomes, and then going from there.
Awesome. So essentially, I liked what Sunny said, and then Nate, you emphasized on it. It's just to get started, is to start the first step, right? So essentially, that's where it all begins. But then skills and talent is not a single-threaded conversation. There are multiple threads associated with it. I heard talent mobility. I heard succession planning. These days, a lot of clients are asking about not just HR data analysis, but they're they are mishmashing supply chain and customer data with HR to basically infer a lot of insights. So I see a lot of integration points coming in the future, and then this journey has no single recipe, so it's all about getting started and start small and experiment your way through it. Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the questions that I thought of putting together. But now the floor is open for the audience, and we do have a few mic runners over here. So if you have a question for our panelists, please put up your hand, and our mic runners will assist you.
Is everyone looking at me? First of all, I want to say congratulations for coming together as a group. This is awesome. This is what we need for this open conversation, so I really appreciate you all coming together. My question is, Sonny, you said earlier around not being the center of the sun. I love that quote. Not all clients necessarily want to see that. Is there ever a conversation between all of you, maybe this is a start, to say, if we're not the sun, let's create the sun together and have one taxonomy, one idea of how this all can connect, so we as clients don't always have to understand and interpret every time?
We haven't had that, yeah. Give it up for that one. Ask the biggest question first, right? Yeah, we haven't quite yet entertained that conversation, although I will say, though, if you look across all of us, the kernels of our taxonomies or ontologies all have some shared elements, right? We probably could get there, but those of you that have been in learning forever, is there one standard to rule them all in any of that? Yeah, it's pretty tough. So we'll see. That's a journey.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and for a long time, I think each of us at some point in the history has said we're going to become the standard. And we've all still trying to make that happen. Or I don't think any of us are still trying to make that happen. I think we're trying to figure out how to take what we've done up to this point and connect it into the broader ecosystem, which I think answers your question, like, from a Degreed perspective, yeah, we want to do that. We want to get to a place where it's a lot easier for everybody, and we're certainly open to the conversation. I think Nog mentioned earlier, we used to talk about being the system of record for skills, and we don't say that anymore. That's not important to Degreed. It's something that we recognize is going to be a part of the broader ecosystem and something that we're going to have to work together on in order to make it really meaningful and powerful for all of you in your organizations. So definitely on our minds.
Awesome. Next question.
Okay, hi.
I see a hand there.
Okay, this is Peter from Ericsson.
All right.
So firstly, thanks to Degreed for getting 3 out of our 4 suppliers on stage. That's superb, thank you. So this is a little bit of a build on the last question, particularly directed at our newest supplier, Eightfold. So to you, Jeff, what are Eightfold doing in particular, specifically, to become more of an open player in the systems environment, particularly around taxonomies and particularly around proficiency scales?
So, thank you. Number one, for being a customer. Thank you for calling us all out on stage. That's great. The biggest, I would say, focus for Eightfold right now is that we understand skills and we are building towards what we call a jobs intelligence engine. Some companies are using that today. And that engine is derived from understanding every single capability of an individual in the company, plus the future skills I talked about earlier. We do that by pulling information from all of the sources that we talked about earlier: Degreed, Workday, and SAP. So our strategy there is to be, to some degree, agnostic and only get the data that's relevant to build the taxonomies, but use AI to validate that. And like I had said earlier, we're really, to Nate's point, we're really outcome focused in that we understand skills to such a degree, no pun intended there, but to such a degree that we can tell you what the skills that are validated, and then we're working on your proficiency point. A lot of the proficiency is done and enabled by the individual oftentimes, but we can tell you the validated skill and then the proficiency from there. We also have multiple partners in our ecosystem, including Degree, that give us data sets around succession planning, around executive hiring, and we pull those data sets in to then build the taxonomy and to build also the ability for or enabling identification of individuals who should be in succession planning or individuals who should be in that ontology, and then build into that jobs intelligence engine. That's really the vision of Eightfold, and that's where we're headed. And that's a real main goal of ours, is to build that out for everybody.
Awesome. Next question. All right, we have a hand here.
I'm really enjoying this session, and it's interesting to end the first part of this day thinking about the data and thinking about the ecosystem. I'm also having a who's on first moment when I'm trying to launch and engage leaders in learning and skills, while also understanding we're a degreed Workday shop and wanting to also look at turning on skills and anticipating that integration. So I'm curious to hear from the panel, do you foresee sort of a dual path approach where your L&D teams are lighting up a small, scalable, focused, maybe 5-skill engagement program just to get leaders and employees focused on their learning in that avenue, while also turning on skills in Workday to analyze what insights are surfaced? Can you give us some tips as to how you would approach that?
Yeah, I think I might have mentioned earlier, but I think it's important to start, because where are you starting from, right? What is the inventory of skills you have? You have some assumptions from working within the organization on what might be those primary skills you want to focus interventions on, but you still need that baseline, right? And understand that, and then you can track your measurement or growth against that. That's what I would suggest. But find me later and we can talk more about it.
Awesome. Questions?
Hello, thank you. My name is Blythe. I come from Deloitte. I'm actually curious about how your companies are looking at all of this skills-based data beyond the confines of an organization. So if we're thinking about skills-based hiring for the populations at hand, how are your organizations looking at pulling in data to help someone who's outside of the organization looking to get that kind of self and family sustaining job?
I can take that one first. You heard earlier the 110 discussion. Certainly Eightfold is a huge partner in that opportunity. Eightfold is also in the public sector realm, government outside of the U.S. and in the U.S., where we place people, for an example, a very large state in the Northeast, for unemployed individuals, where we can identify the skills that they have and match them with the hiring entities or businesses in that state. So the view that we have long term, to your point, is that any individual, regardless of company or business they're in today, we can identify the skills that they've got and look at how we would place them into a career sustaining role, regardless of it's with a business, in the current role they're in or in, an unemployment, capacity. And, the 110 story, if anybody hasn't heard that yet, it was alluded to earlier, we're happy to talk to that. But the vision there is being, actually, done today. So, great question.
I'll add that, I was lucky enough to play a role in this really interesting experiment in Singapore, where There was a government partnership with Accenture and then particular media leader, tech, media, telecom leaders. And they all, through fits and starts, came to agree on particular job profiles, like say front-end web developer, what that means, how you can assess for the capabilities, and then connect to partnerships with learning providers to drive those skills. And the intent was that, hey, we have a shared understanding of what these jobs look like, what's required, and if you follow these paths that were funded partly by the government, we can guarantee you a fair shot at one of these roles in a career there. And I think that that type of partnership, government, provider, other industry organizations is something really interesting to get us to what you're asking about.
Yeah. Just to add to what both Jeff and Sunny alluded, we see governments taking an important role in this kind of a mass skilling happening in Middle East and a lot of growth market. This is an active initiative by governments. But then in some markets, we see it is a conglomerate of companies coming together to also decide on their corporate responsibility of skilling their people, not just to be employable in-house, like for internal mobility, but also to be employable in the marketplace. So it's that's why it's more a sustainability and a corporate responsibility question now for skilling for organizations as well beyond government. But excellent question. Can we take one more? All right.
You have a question for the audience, David?
No.
Okay. Looks like people are ready for an early lunch, perhaps. but thank you so much for being with here, and I'm pretty sure the panel would be more than happy to take any questions that you may have offline for them outside this room. Specifically, if you have any situation that you would like to discuss with them, they would be happy to take it offline. Thank you.